Hello and welcome to Stories of Resilience, our podcast series to promote an ACE-aware nation in Scotland. Adverse childhood experiences touch us all in one way or another. This series explores the thoughts of those involved with the ACEs movement in Scotland, and we talk to individuals who have stories of resilience to share. I'm Gary Robinson. My guest today is Michelle Brennan-Jones. Michelle has a very honest, open and inspiring story to share with us today, and has first-hand experience of adverse childhood experiences. Michelle, welcome to Stories of Resilience. It's great to speak to you in person, as it were, because I've read lots about you over the past couple of days. And the podcast is called Stories of Resilience, and you have a real story of resilience that you're willing to share with us. So thank you for that. Tell me a little bit about your early days, your childhood, Michelle.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks very much, Gary, for inviting me onto your podcast. And it's great to speak to you this morning. Well, my background, my childhood was very much influenced by, unfortunately, my parents' alcoholism. My mum and dad, that's all I really knew from my childhood was alcohol. Kind of shaped every decision that was made in the house and every behaviour that was made as well. So I had to, looking back now as an adult with children of my own, I realised I didn't really have much of a childhood as such. And I do understand that came with, a lot of baggage, shall we say, which I've tried to unpack as I've grown older and hopefully a bit wiser.
You've got a very interesting story, and it struck a chord. It struck a chord with me as well, as has actually the whole movement and concept of ACEs. Since I've been doing a lot of studying and reading around ACEs, and because my father was similar, my mother wasn't, but my father was, and it was one of those. It was one of those situations. I always felt, well, you just got on with it. It was one of those things, and you just battle through. Were you the same?
Yeah, absolutely, Gary. The very idea that someone would have any kind of pity or or anything like that for me would be completely it would be so strange, because it was my normal. I think everyone has their own normal depending on their environment, their circumstances, their influences, how they see the world. And of course now we know with all this science that's backing up how we are able to cope through our brain development and and all the things that go on inside us in our biology that we don't really know but just happen. So I think that's very, very true. And it's very important, Gary, when you're kind of communicating this story, because you have to think about, well, what does resilience mean? Basically, I think resilience just means surviving and then hopefully learning things and then going on to thrive and be an example to, if you have children or you have friends. I think it's all down to how you view the world yourself and how you have your biases that are, of course, shaped when you're a child.
And you talked about resilience, and reading your story, you have battled through, and we'll take it step by step. But
sure.
When did you first find out about ACEs? Is it a relatively new concept for you, or have you known about it for a while?
It's funny, Gary. It's like everything else. You just kind of. Everything else that really, really kind of strikes you and gives you that amazing, how this all fits now kind of moment. You look back and it was kind of creeping around on the sidelines, and it was kind of, I like to read a lot and reflect on, I think from being a child I've always been interested basically in why people do what they do, what influences them to make decisions. I've been very fascinated with that, and part of my experience of learning about ACEs was there was a radio show that spoke about how there was this research, which I now know to be Fleety and Ander, talking about the paper that they did and the 17,000 people that they looked at and what it all meant. And you know, now we all know about these 10 ACEs. But at the time, it was at the sidelines for me, so I kind of noticed that. And then I deliver training for parents with my job, which is a development officer with Pragma Books for Babies. Part of that training's about attachment, and that mentions the Fleety and Ander paper as well. Then I was really interested in the amazing work that the Violence Reduction Unit do with Karen McCluskey and John Carnochan, and how they approach violence as a public health issue, and of course they had Philandering, they had them over like 10 or whatever years ago to Glasgow, and how you look at why people do what they do and what influences them. So I've kind of, and then I think probably the main thing for me recently has been last year I saw a resilience film. I think it was about May last year, so nearly a year ago I saw a resilience film, and it kind of all just went, right, I'm going to have to do my own ACEs score now. And then you're realising that a score over 6 means that you could die 20 years younger than someone that doesn't. It's quite a thing to learn when you're sitting in the Cameo Cinema in Edinburgh. Yes. so it's kind of like the information was kind of around me, and I was absorbing it, and then I think that film, which is such a powerful film, and the work that Nadine Burke-Harris does, it's kind of made it all kind of fall into place for me. So, does that make sense?
Absolutely, and very concise. Thank you. When you were young and you were facing the challenges that you had at home, how did that affect your school life and your education? That side of were you subsequently then a quiet child? Were you quite withdrawn, or did you go the other way?
Yeah, I kind of went the other way, and I was probably what people would, kind of in the olden days would call like a rebel, in that I really, I didn't really feel I fitted in at school, and so I would, what in Glasgow you would call dog it. I would stay out of school a lot, and I would,
or rather, play truant.
Spend my time hanging about in the high flats, doing nothing with no money. Which, when I think back, I go, how could that have been preferable to being in school? Because now I love learning. So it's a bit, it's very strange. But yes, I didn't. I left school as soon as I could, basically, as soon as I hit 16.
And then what happened?
School,
what happened from there? Did you find a job?
The first job that it was funny. The first job that I had was in a head shop in Glasgow. There used to be a record shop, Virgin, on Renfield Street, and there was a head shop in it. And I worked there for about a month. For the a head shop being a shop that sells drugs paraphernalia.
Ah, right.
So that was
okay. I was going to say, for the uninitiated. Just to clarify about the head shop, that was for the uninitiated. A little bit like me, I'm a little bit behind the door when it comes to these things. But okay, so that was your first job, was it?
Yes, that was my. Well, no, it wasn't my first job, because I worked from I could. I used to work in the ice cream van, going around the scheme that I was brought up in. So I always kind of worked a bit here and there. Worked in the Wimpy. In Glasgow. Do you remember the Wimpy?
Yeah, I do. I remember the Wimpy. I thought they were great burgers, incidentally. I thought the Wimpys were the best.
It's funny, because at the time, being like the rebel, I was a vegetarian while I worked in the Wimpy, so I just ate the apple slices. So my childhood was very rich and varied, and I didn't. What I did love though was, I think, which I kind of see as being something that's really helped me when I was young, was music. I absolutely loved music. I loved listening to anything on the radio, and I loved writing out lyrics. And I think that's probably what made me then ultimately, I'm going to jump a bit forward, is as a mature student, go to Edinburgh Uni and do English literature, because I just loved words. So I think music is a very important thing for people with teenagers and young people, and it certainly saved me because I used to spend all my waking hours listening to music.
Do you know what, Michelle? This is really weird because I so agree with you. I was thinking, in fact, I was speaking to Chris, who's producing this podcast. We've recorded quite a few now. And music played a massive part in my life and still does to this day. So I agree completely with what you're saying about young people. But actually, I think people of my generation, your generation, and beyond, I think music still plays a massive part and does build resilience. I mean, there's songs in my life that I go back to when I'm feeling a bit down or a bit blue, and they boost me right up.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Doesn't matter what age you are. You're absolutely right. No, that's true.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And I think that might be why I'm just thinking, as we're talking, that probably why when I was 16, I then met my boyfriend who was in a band and played bass, and then I went on to have my first son with him when I was 18. And so that was probably music was involved along there as well.
Why? A lot of people, I would imagine, that have been through what you've been through, perhaps listening to this, would be slightly hesitant to put their head above the parapet, if you like, and talk so publicly about their past and aces. What drives you, Michelle?
Well, I think that I think being vulnerable and being honest actually can change you as a person, but also it gives that authenticity to connecting with other people. And I feel that my probably what's been the strongest buffers, if you like, in my life have been my friendships, and they've been based and rooted in honesty and authenticity and connection. And I think that to me, I hold that very, very dear. So I feel that you can, that's why first impressions and all that. I connect with people very quickly when they don't have those barriers up. But I totally understand why people do as well, because we all have to protect ourselves in order to survive. So we all use different different ways of doing that. So, but for me, and maybe that's come across because, I do have anxiety and I have suffered from depression, and I do appreciate that that my honesty isn't for everybody because it can be challenging.
It is. It absolutely can be challenging, but it's certainly getting my thumbs up because, when you hear somebody speak so honestly and so openly, it pushes buttons in you as a person, and you go, well, do you know what? If Michelle's saying that, maybe I can contribute. Where are you now on life's journey?
Well, I've got a really brilliant job. Working for Craig Miller Books for Babies, and that's in the early years. And I think that's probably partly why I'm so involved in the early years, is because I'm such a big fan of I know I mentioned before Cam Cuskin and John Carnochan, but when they've said that it would be better to put money into 1,000 health visitors rather than 1,000 police officers, that really resonated with me, because I feel that when I go into people's homes in my work, through my work, and connect with them in their homes and look at learning from them and connecting through relationships. It's relationships really that will make this society like a ACE-aware nation that we're talking about, and having a society that is the best place for children to grow up. I think that we need to have people supporting families and connecting with families from birth. And so at the moment, that's my job, and I really, really love that. But also, I'm really interested in all the learning more about trauma-informed, attachment-led, all the brilliant things that all the people are doing around us at the moment. So when I learn when I learn all this information, I want to share it with the community that I work in and with the friends that I have, because I think that all this information that we're kind of on a journey together with, it's like that's kind of, we're all part of it.
And you've got 3 boys?
I have
3 boys.
I've got my son, who's my first son's, he's 31, and then my little one's 11. I've got a middle one, who's 19. And because my parents, they didn't get opportunities to go to university, and they had to leave school without education, and I think that one thing that I realise as well about opportunities for education is that people have to believe in you, and you have to be around people who believe in you. And I had that. I was really lucky. I had friends. It might not have been family, but I had friends who believed in me, and that's why I ended up going to university as a mature student. And I continue, hopefully, learning. I don't think I'm going to stop, because I don't think we ever do we?
Absolutely not. And knowing about ACEs, has that formed you as a parent? How you I mean, you've got a 31-year-old, a 19-year-old, and an 11-year-old, and you will have learnt parenting skills throughout the way. So has being ACEs aware, if you like, has that changed your parenting style throughout the years?
It's very interesting, because I think what it has done is it's given me the language that I didn't have, because I think that when I had my first son at 18, I was just very determined not to give him the upbringing that I had, which was, what I now know is to be like, I had a disorganised attachment. I was hyper-vigilant. I was in an environment which I never felt safe. So I was very determined as a teenager not to do that to my son. So that was at the front of my mind. But now I realise that that actually I was protecting him and buffing him from adverse childhood experiences by doing that, and now I have the language for it, whereas before I didn't. And now I understand what it means to self-regulate, and what I've been able to do for my children that I did instinctively, but now I can actually speak to them about, which I think is very important as well, to communicate with your children, because children are very, very wise. And I learn from them all the time. But I'm able to say to them, that what does it mean when you have a worry? How do you feel about that physically? Now we know that that if you're able to regulate yourself and self-soothe, then that means that you'll be able to cope. You'll be able to deal with with things when they come up. And so I think what being ACE aware now has done really is given people, and me, the language, but also the awareness of what it means to look through an ACE's lens. So I'm like, at the moment, I'm choosing healthier. I kind of self-medicated a lot to cope with not having a regulated stress response, but now I'm finding that mindfulness and exercise, things that I didn't necessarily think, I thought were good, but I didn't really know. Whereas now I know why they're good. And I think that makes things just, I don't know, it just gives them a bit more understanding when you understand why things are good, because then you're more likely to do them. Does that make sense?
That makes absolute sense. Absolute sense. It's been a pleasure. I wish this podcast was an hour long, but
I know.
we're restricting ourselves to about 15 minutes or thereabouts. Just one last thing. Will you be attending the conference in September?
Yes, I will. I'm really looking forward to it. Myself and my colleague got our tickets, so yes.
That's great.
We will be there September 26th.
Well, Michelle, I look forward to meeting you face to face as opposed to over technology. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope to continue this conversation with you in some form at some point in the future. Michelle Brennan-Jones, thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you, Gary. Great to speak to you today.
That was Stories of Resilience, celebrating individuals and organisations who are helping to make Scotland an ACE-aware nation. Find out more about ACEs and the ACE Aware Conference this September in Glasgow at www.aceawarescotland.com.